So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. Today we're talking about the Cartels with a little bit of kind of strategy and advice in Andean Abyss. This will be kind of the final one in the series. We've done FARC, AUC, we've done government, Cartels. The Cartels, if you've watched the old Netflix show Narcos, which is wonderful, that is just Medellin and just Cali, right? So this is like the whole scale of it, all the different cartels, we kind of amalgamate them into this one green faction here. So the cartels have a lot of power in this, but it can take them a while to get going. So the first thing that we're going to look at that we always do is what are our victory conditions. For cartels, we have to have more than 10 bases, and we got a little track here, so we got 6 on the board currently. So we need to have 11, and when you start getting to 11, these are green to let you know that you're like in the money and you're winning. But not only that, you also have to have more than 40 resources, and you start with 10, and you're going to spend those real quick. And so part of the cartels is that they are a slow burn in this game, because even if you were to like get out all of your bases, if you built all 15 bases, when you check victory at the beginning of the propaganda round, yeah, you meet this condition, but you have no resources, you get that. Then when you generate resources, you're going to get 45, so you're going to win in the second propaganda round if no one touches you. But it's like impossible for you to win in the first propaganda round, and only starting at the second one is it possible to win, although it's still quite unlikely. Just because you're not going to get that many resources, you're usually going to end up about here, and then you're going to have to spend them, and then by the time it gets to the third propaganda round, you've got resources around here, and then it's a case of, can I get my bases out? So they're usually a bit of a slower burn. I've seen them win in the second propaganda round. It is possible. If you get a lucky momentum card that gives you quadruple resources in the first one and kind of no one does anything to you. But more often than not, you're playing a longer game than everyone else. FARC and government are desperately trying to win as quickly as humanly possible. AUC really just like has to win whenever this is, and that can be that's very up in the air about when that is, but you are very much playing a longer game than everyone else. It's impossible for you to win at the first one. At least I've never seen it. It would be crazy if you did. So what is it that you're looking to do? Well, early in the game, it's rally, rally, rally. And I know that is kind of a theme for a lot of the factions here, but like the government's going to rally once and they've got a bunch of guys, and then it's like go, go, go with all these other actions. You are trying to rally, and then rally again, and you will find yourself doing a lot of that in this game. Rally, rally, put out guerrillas, turn your guerrillas into bases, put out more guerrillas, move your guerrillas, turn those into bases. That's really what you're doing a lot of, because you have to put out the bases, because the bases generate you resources. Once you have resources, you can generate more bases to get more resources, and once you have both at a high level, that's how you win, right? So, what are you looking at when the game starts out? For me personally, I look to bolster Cali. So I will, because you can put a lot of guys in here, I will very desperately try to keep one guerrilla in spaces with bases. If you have more guys than that, like, that's okay, but you have a very small number of cartels guerrillas. And if you like have a bunch of them just being defensive and protectionist, you're not doing anything else on the rest of the board, which can be a tough ask. So typically, when a game starts, I'm going to rally a couple guys here so that in a subsequent turn, I can turn 2 of those into a base. Then I've got a base, I've got 2 bases, and they're protected by a guerrilla. They have to flip me over before anything happens, so I've got a chance to flip myself back down before they could assault me, right? That's the 2-step nature of your guerrillas, is to protect your bases. So typically, I'm trying to put out a couple guys here. You can start putting a guy here and a guy here and a guy here, because these bases are very vulnerable. But because these spaces are already filled up, you don't have anywhere to expand. So those are purely defensive they're not really doing anything else. And so if you put 2 guys there, and a guy here, and a guy in each of these, you've only got 5 guerrillas to work with at this point. So there are times where, like, I'll just kind of, like, leave these. I'll leave these 2, typically, because FARC has no business removing those. They might do if they want to build their own bases, but they're going to be more focused early game with putting out the terror markers here and, like, building their own stuff and moving out. And if they're spending and wasting time attacking and ambushing to remove your bases here, they're going to be in such a big hole that, frankly, you don't really have to worry about that anyway. Because once again, we as the Cartels are playing a much longer game than everyone else. You might consider going up here as well. This is empty space. This is 1, 2, at least 3 turns before I can build a base, but as soon as I can do that, I can put 2 more. So this is a kind of a long-term investment. AUC might be going up here. FARC might put guys up here on 1 to just, like, start terrorizing this area. So there might be an area that you end up fighting over, but putting guys out. I also like to put guys in more cities. If I'm gonna put a guy in Medellin, I might put a guy in one of these other areas over here as well, so that now, if the government really wants to target me and sweep me out of all those cities, it's very expensive. They're going to target one of those, but guess what? I'm building in all these other ones as well. So you're trying to spread your forces out as best you can with your very small amount of forces, and that's what I talk about when, if you're playing very defensively and putting guerrillas out here, you can't do all this other stuff which might be more helpful. Another thing that you might well look at is taking over these forests. So very regularly I will also go 1, 2, 3. That's 3 resources for rally. And then on a subsequent turn I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. 3 resources for a rally. And then I'm going to go base, base, base. I get all my guerrillas back and I've got 3 bases on the board. And basically no other player can touch these outside of the government. And the government might waste an airstrike, or they might do an eradicate, but the government both has to have a special activity to do that, and then they have to consider wasting it on this when you're not even in your victory conditions, you don't have any money anymore, because this is still the first propaganda round, and they got a lot of other things to worry about with FARC on your board. And once again, Cartels, and kind of like the Syndicate in Cuba Libre, you fill this power void while everyone else is fighting. You're just like, let's make money, let's build bases, and all of a sudden everyone looks at you when you've got a ton of money after a propaganda card and a ton of bases, and they're like, oh no, we let it get out of hand. Very regularly you're going to find yourself in a position like that, because if they focus too hard on you, they're going to collapse on other fronts to other factions, and they know because you're playing a long game they can kind of get away with leaving you alone earlier on in the beginning. One thing to consider, and this is something that I would say to new players, is there is 2 cards in the game that are very painful. They have a card that says remove all Cartels pieces from 3 coastal spaces. So if you're building here and over here, or in Panama, or in this city, which it can be very tempting to do, and it can be very easy to do, there is one card that can just, like, clean you out of those, and it's gross. So if you see that, you have to take that, or you have to block someone from taking that, and it's like, I will pass so that I can go on that and stop people from taking that. And there's also one that I think is like, remove all Cartels pieces from 3 cities. And the cities are really, really tasty, because government's not building bases there, so you know there's going to be double spaces in all of them, and you can go to these kind of minor ones that aren't going to be targets for terrorism because they're too small to affect the board in any meaningful way. So you're quite safe, and again, you've got 2 turns, so if they sweep you, you've got a turn to rally back down again, right? You can protect yourself. And cities are generally good rallying spaces, because if you can go to someone like here, I've got a couple bases, I got 4 guys out. So if they kill a bunch of those, guess what? I'm just going to, like, build more bases, no big deal. But just know that there are a couple gotcha cards in there that you have to think about. And if you haven't seen those, or if you have seen them, you know that's like, cool, I'm safe. I can go and build in the cities, no big deal. So that's just something to consider. There's a couple real nasty cards. There are cards that will unlock Panama. There are cards that will unlock Ecuador. If you can get those, I would highly recommend it. You're going to put a couple bases out here and a guy, and sweep doesn't activate you. So like, the Colombian government can't send a military into Panama, right? You can only ever have 2 pieces in here, so you might have 1 guerrilla in a base or 2 bases, although they are vulnerable there. And so those are extra spaces to get your bases, and you put them out really far away, and they're kind of out of mind. And you're filling these spaces and these, and you got a couple on the board. All of a sudden, you've got all your bases on the board, and you're just racking in resources. And it's slow for the government to get you. They're going to do eradicate. They're going to do airstrikes against you. But the airstrikes only remove 1 base. It's not the end of the world if it's not protected. Or if they eradicate, it helps FARC. And they don't want to help FARC quite as much. So it's something to consider, using the extra spaces. When those cards come up, you're like, cool, yes, I definitely want to do that. I definitely want to unlock these extra board spaces so I can put out more bases, especially when things get congested in the center as well. And finally, the number 1 thing with cartels is your shipments. You have a special action, which is to process, and you are going to place these on the board in regions where you have bases. So this little guy, he picks up a shipment, and you can do 2 of them, so we'll put a shipment with this idiot here in Cali as well. These are very, very, very important. You want to protect these where you can, so if you can put them in areas where there's no one else, highly recommend doing that, or again in cities where, hey, they're going to flip you up, but also you're going to flip back down, and you're not going to lose that, because if this guy dies, it's going to go to the person who killed you, and then they've got it. These are very, very, very strong. These are a table bargaining chip as well, and this is something that you will learn over time, and you have to kind of work with your players at the table. So what does a shipment do? A shipment in the resources phase can either be turned in to build a base in that location. That's the really important part. So if this guy, well, here, let's use the one on the board. If I process and I give this guy here, I have to march him here, and then in this phase, after we've done victory, we remove this and we add a base. That's really, really good. I don't get resources for that. I don't think I do anyway. I'm pretty sure I don't. But also, this guy is now a victory point, right? But I have to have processed and then subsequently marched. So, for example, if the guy was still here with this, I can't build a base here because there's a stacking limit of 2, but I'd turn this in for 6 resources. Well, guess what? This is 24 resources right here. So if you're going to cash in 3 times your bases, you're probably going to have anywhere from 8 to 10 on the board. I'm going to get 30 resources from that, plus another 24 if I can get them all out. I'm suddenly got a ton of money, and then all I got to do is keep my bases on the board and keep them protected and keep building them, which I've got lots of money to spend before I go below these this threshold. It puts you in a very strong position. But the other aspect of these, and something that is key to being like a really strong cartels player, is that you can use these for a free lim up. You can use these, and any guerrilla faction, I think any faction can use them. Whenever you take a lim up, you can cash these in. You can cash in 1 to do a free, no cost, lim up somewhere else, or a different one. So this is really powerful because you could rally somewhere, put a bunch of guys out, and then you can dump this to rally again and immediately turn them into a base, right? You could do something like that. Or you could march somewhere and then you could immediately cash these in to do an attack. And you could roll the die and you could launch an attack at these guys. The combinations of being able to do 2 different operations is so strong. You can rally guys, and then you can terror there. If you need to desperately stop the government, you can literally rally a guy into Bogota, toss a free limb up, and then you can do a terror there to flip this to passive support and go down 8 support if they're in their victory conditions. That is such a strong weapon in your arsenal if you've got these out on the board. I cannot explain to you how strong that is. It can be used to, hey, I've got a limb up, I can rally to protect some guys, to flip them back down if I get swept, but I can only do it in one space. Guess what? I can toss in one of these and protect another space if I've got a couple spaces with bases that all get swept up. And then finally with these, when you place these out, you don't have to place them with your own guerrillas. So these are a bargaining chip. They are a table talk bargaining chip. And you say, hey, Mr. Fark, old buddy, old pal, these are very exposed and weak. If I process to give you a limb up, please don't attack me. Now, they can turn around and, like, screw you over, but then you're immediately going to turn off that tap of resources because a base for them, or 6 resources for them, or a free limb up for them, yeah, it helps them, but it also protects you where you can't protect yourself. You think about it as like hiring some communist mercenaries, paying off the AUC to leave you alone, paying people off to like, hey, if I give you this, please don't take this nasty event that would hurt me, when they were thinking about it, right? You can use these as a resource. People will be trying to take these off of you very desperately, and so you do want to protect those where you can by maybe having a couple extra guys to suck up some hits, because as long as you have, so for example, if we've got 3 guys, if they kill these 2, this guy goes to my guy. Only when you eliminate the last one of a faction does it go over to the person who was doing the attacking. So sometimes, you know, if you can afford it, put those in areas where you have a few guerrillas or there's not many people who are going to attack you. But using those as a bargaining chip. And I say to the AUC and the FARC players, ask nicely for those. Hey dude, when you rally or when you process, please can I have one of those? And I will, you know, do X, Y, and Z for you. I'll take care of this problem that you have on the board, or I'll do this, that, and the other. They're a really neat bargaining chip that you have. But if you want to just kind of keep them and use them yourself, they are an invaluable resource as well. So that was a little bit longer on the Cartels because I think they got a bit more in-depth and nuance to them. But I really enjoy playing as them. They're a very different style of game, but I've had a lot of fun playing as those guys, and a very different type of faction to many different war games out there. But that was a look at the Cartels, and that was the last in our Andean Abyss kind of strategy type tips video. So hopefully that was helpful, but appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.